Today I want to show you different building techniques that Satisfactory just doesn't tell you. In the past, we've gone over curving methods, and if you want to check that out, link will be in the description. But today I thought there's a lot of different techniques I use personally on my streams when I'm building that people ask about all the time. So we're going to go over a few of those today and show you how to do them. Now, the first one that I want to go over is one of my personal favorites that I use a ton and that you guys may have seen on the channel previously, that being how to line up these pillars like this. A lot of people like to use pillars as trim and whatnot, but they don't know how to make it to where they line up like this. This might be the most asked question in my stream, so today we're going to go over how we build this, and it's really simple. It doesn't matter about how long the gap is in between each side, so you can see that we are going to be pulling from this straight piece down to this straight piece over here. So I'm going to demonstrate on these two pieces. If you're trying to get the angle from this one to this one, it's super easy. To get this effect on this outside to outside curve, all we're going to do is grab a painted beam or a steel beam, either one. So you can either do metal or painted, either one, doesn't matter. We're going to grab it and we're going to go from the middle of the pillar. So we're going to split the difference right in the middle here and the very outside snapping point. So we're going to look right here. We're just going to grab this, put it in free form mode, and then look at this same spot on the top one. So we're going to look at that middle point right here. Now you can see, and I specifically chose this size because you can see that the beam actually doesn't reach to the pillar here, but it's still going to act as a valid snap point for us to look at, so the trajectory of the beam will be fine. So we're going to look right here and we're going to place it. Once this builds, we can grab from the same snapping point we were looking at and look at the beam, and it'll let us build. And so we can see now that this is in line, and we need the beam to connect to both sides. So we can do this for this side as well. So same thing, we're going to look to the middle spot there and then pull and look at the beam. Once it's built, it'll have the valid snapping point like that. And this could be full build height. It doesn't matter. You would just have to be able to look. And so these don't have to even connect. You just need the starting snapping point, and you'll see why in a second. So we're going to grab a pillar and we're going to build on the edge. So we're going to snap these like this, and we're going to build like 2 or 3. I like to do 3, it gives us plenty of room. We're going to build 3 in, and we're going to do this on both sides. So now that we have that on the top and bottom, we're going to grab a beam again, and there are different hotkeys I'll be using throughout the build today. One of them will be select or like pick block. Many games have this feature, but you just middle mouse click on whatever you're looking at. So you can do it while in dismantle mode, or you can just look at an item and pick block it basically. I think it's called the selection tool, and you can get the buildable for it. So you don't have to go through hotbars or look in the build menu like this. You can just look at it, middle mouse click, and you have it. So we're gonna grab our beams again, and on our 3 that we placed, we're just gonna go on the inside, on the bottom, and we're gonna make a 1 meter like this. So now it should look like so. Now these are just acting as snapping points for us, so that when we want to grab pillars, we can actually snap to this. As you can see, now there's 2 different snapping points. We're going to snap to that 1 meter, and we're going to build our pillars. And we're going to do the same on the top side. On the inside of the pillar here, we're just going to make that snapping point, lining it up on the edge, like so. And it doesn't matter how long these ones are. We could make these 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters. It doesn't matter how long this one is. We just need the edge snapping point, as you can see right here. It's a little weird sometimes, but we just look at that and we build. Now we can delete everything except for the ones that we just built here. So we're going to delete these 6, and then all of the painted beams here. So I'm going to dismantle filter right here, just delete all of these beams like so. And now we can zoop these and connect these to the edge, and you'll see these now line up. So the new ones are the unpainted here, and the existing ones are the steel ones. And so now we can zoop our pillars and have them meet in the middle if we wish. And you'll see that they overlap and they don't actually line up. And this is why we pull from both sides to get snapping points, because they won't line up. If I were to, let's say, I'm going to build this out so I still have the snapping point later on. But if I were to remove this whole line here and only zooped up this way, you can see that they don't line up. And this is why we need those double snap points. And even if we took, let's say, a 4 meter and, nudged this up, That's one tick. If we do a half tick, you can see we can get close. We can get really close, but we can't get it directly on. This is why we do our 2 different snapping points. Just makes it nice and easy, and it works every single time. Now, this might seem really complicated and like it would take a long time. Trust me, once you do this a few times, it becomes second nature. It is really easy, and it looks so good that I do think it's worth the extra time. Not many people make builds where your pillars will line up like this, and trust me, once you look back on a build after you're completely done, I think you'll be happy that you spent the time and got these all lined up. You can blueprint these, which I have done many times, and it does help with, for one, speeding up the process of building, but also you can make just the corners if you wish to use later in other builds. And that's about all for the pillar like lining up, and you can do that with the small pillars and the frame pillars as well. So there's a lot of buildables you can do that with. The next thing that I want to kind of talk about is ZFighting. So some people are always curious about how I get rid of ZFighting, and I have an example of coated concrete here. That this is something you would definitely run into if you wanted to do angles, which is something I do quite often in my builds. And I want to show you at least my process of getting rid of ZFighting, because there are multiple ways of doing it, just like curving, and I have my own preferred methods. So a lot of times I get ZFighting when I want to do a 45-degree angle like this on a build, and I use my barrier method like this. After putting in the foundations to where they line up on the edges, if I were to remove the flooring here, you can see that it lines up perfectly, but we get this ZFighting. And the way I like to deal with this is a little bit different, but hey, it's my preferred method. So what I'm going to do is every single foundation that will be touching one of the angled ones, like this right here, I'm going to lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this one right here in the middle, and on any one of these foundations that's touching the side, we can do this with. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to place a small pillar here, and snapping on the underside, just like looking at the bottom side here, it'll snap. We want to place another one down below, just like that. So this is exactly what we want. We then want to take either a low barrier or a road barrier, either one, they both work, and we're going to look at our pillar. Now you can see we have this free movement here. This is exactly what we want. And so all we have to do is look down at the bottom and keep going down ever so slightly, as little as we can, until it goes yellow. So right there goes yellow. So if I go up a tiny bit, barely moving, and I go down a tiny bit, you can see it changes from blue to yellow. That means that blue is above the current foundation level, and yellow is slightly into it or below. So I'm going to go down just a tiny bit and place it. I'm then just going to grab a foundation, look at the road barrier, and you can see now it's blue, and it lets me place it within here, right? So we're going to place that, and you'll see something really cool here in just a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these ones that are on grid right here, and I'm going to delete the pillar such, and now we're going to build back exactly what I just deleted, which is 2 over here, 2 over here, and 1 in the middle. And you'll see there is no ZFighting, but that's because we just lowered this whole section right here by a few pixels. It may not look like it to you, but this right here is lowered. And the more you practice this, the more you'll get used to just lowering it by a very small amount, and at some points you won't be able to notice. Now I did lower this a little bit more just for exaggerated purposes, so you guys can see that there is like a slight extra line right here, but when you're walking around you're not going to notice it, and your Pioneer doesn't move at all when walking over these like changes in elevation. Now, you do have some of this overlap here, which you can get rid of for sure. Something you can do is you can remove that middle one, and we can look at this bottom one here and nudge in a new set. But sometimes at distance that will still enable some ZFighting on that bottom level, so just be aware of that. But a lot of the time I'm just going to nudge it in like so, and for the most part it is okay. But if you want to, you can actually raise this one up or lower this one a little bit as well to avoid ZFighting altogether right here, but that is completely up to you. But remember, when you're building with this method and lowering and changing foundation heights, you are actually changing your snapping to world grid. So when you lower via the pillar method, you're actually going off of world grid. So if you ever build off of any of the foundations in which you have lowered, it's technically not going to be at the same level. And if you compound and keep lowering, at some point it will be a noticeable difference in between grids. So something I'll do is I'll build and build and build and build and pretty much get the whole build done. And then after that, I'll go back. That'll be one of the last things I do, is lower foundations in certain areas. That way I know I'm not building off of them and changing my world grid snapping. But yeah, you can see the difference already. We have a bunch of ZFighting over here and we have none over here. This is really a great way, and pretty easy actually, to just lower your foundations and basically eliminate ZFighting. And this will help when using multiple types of foundations. So if you're using asphalt and concrete, or asphalt and steel, or whatever, this is a great method to kind of combat that and get some like really cool, unique design border stuff in. Some super fun stuff you can play with. And one of the last things that I want to go over as a hidden feature in Satisfactory is how you can make water extractors snap to a grid, because you'd be surprised how many people have come into my stream and asked how I do that. Okay, so I've hopped over at some water, and what I've done is just pop down a foundation, and you can see that this one just barely sits beneath the water level, which is totally fine. So I placed one there, right there, and then placed some water meters on top of it, and you can see the water meters are just above the water, which is exactly what we want. So what I'm going to do is grab foundation here, turn it to a 1 meter, and we're going to just vertically zoom down a bit like that. And then all we have to do is remove these. We're going to remove, like, let's say 2 down below, and then this gives us some foundations that are a few meters below that we can just zoop around underneath the water. So once we have that little platform there, I always do like a 3 or 4 deep, something like that. And this can actually be part of your design as well, because you can in some places actually see what's underneath the water. Some places you can't, it's a little hard and dark, but like this one we can see underneath. So we can actually kind of invest in patterns and such. So if we throw like a factory zone underneath, we can see that down below. That's just a little side note. But all we have to do is grab a water extractor here, and you can see that I can just look at the foundations there. Now we can't nudge it, but I can look at it and it'll move in increments of the foundation. So it can be really easy to line things up. So if I wish, I could move this like 4 notches back like that, and then we can either line them up using the foundations, or we can just look at the other water extractor and hold control. That is also an option. Both of those will work, but we can just build these on the foundation, and these will always be in a perfect line, and they'll line up with whatever we build on a foundation over here. This can be a really great and easy way of organizing your water extractors, organizing your logistic pipelines, and kind of making things look cool. So I hope you have actually found some use out of this. There's a lot of things in Satisfactory that if you watch enough people play the game, you'll find you're like, wow, I've never seen that before. With a lot of new players picking up the game after 1.0 release, I thought maybe it was worth making a video on some of these more nuanced things that are a little harder to figure out. If you enjoyed, please let me know down below. And if you want some more videos like this, feel free to say so. December has been a pretty ridiculously busy month for me, so I do apologize for the lack of uploads. After the holidays, I will be hitting the ground running as fast as possible with both Factorio and Satisfactory. I do hope you found some use out of the things I showed and talked about today. I know in my builds I use these all the frickin' time, and so they have been a lifesaver for me. But that is about it for me. Hopefully everybody has a good rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it may be for you. And until next time, peace.
I'm slick with words, tongue sharp, you left in thirds. You pitching verbs, I knock it out, I'm flipping birds. While smoking herbs, I'm blocking out what often hurts. I'm moving herds, it's me, my family, money merge.